Verse 91. Sri Vishnu Sahasranaama Stotra. Bharavrit Katito Yogi Yogishah Sarvakamadah Ashramah Shramanakshamaha Suparno Vayuvahanaha. There are 9 names in this verse, can be pronounced even individually. Bharavrit Kathitah Yogi Yogishah Sarvakamadah Ashramah Shramanah Kshamah Suparnah Vayuvahanaha. Bharabrit means bearer of the weight. He is a substratum of the entire universe. Katitaha, he is well described in the Vedas. He, one who is reveling in his own self. Yogi Shaha, he is the Isha of the yogis, Lord of the yogins. Sarvakamadaha, bestower of all wishes, fulfiller of all our wishes. Ashramaha, resting place, denotes Parandhama. Shramanaha, scorcher, deadly enemy for the unrighteous persons. Shamaha, reducing everybody to the most subtle form during dissolution. Suparnaha, having good leaves, denotes the Ashwatha tree. Vayuvahanaha, mover of the wind, also means he moves with the speed of wind. Now, the individual names are a bit bearer of weight. It literally means one who carries the entire physical load of the universe. In his manifestation as Adishesha with 1,000 hoods, the Supreme is said to be carrying the entire physical burden of the universe. However, this is different from an individual carrying something other than himself. When we carry a load, we are carrying only the load other than ourselves. But the Supreme is not like this. Supreme represents the world itself. So when he says he is Bharabrit, actually it means Narayana, Mahavishnu, is a very material cause of the universe. Further, carrying the burden has a wider meaning. It means taking responsibility for the survival and for the well being of the individual beings and also the universe as a whole. Is the form of this universe, of the Supreme. The next name, Katitaha, gives an indication. Katitaha means described in the Vedas. Mahavishnu has been described in the Vedas and all spiritual texts. Basically, as it says, Mahavishnu is the essence, is the supreme being, is the essence of the entire universe as it is described in all the scriptures. For example, Harivamsham says, Vede Ramayane Punye Bharate Bharatarshava Adau Madhye Tatha Ante Cha Vishnu Sarvatra Giyate. It means Mahavishnu has been praised as the substratum, as the sole support, and his glories have been chanted in the beginning, in the middle, and also the conclusion of great epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, both of which are eradicators of sin. Parayana of Ramayana or Shravana of Mahabharata will be set to free us from all our sins. Further, the Vedas have described him as Yogi, which is the next name. Yogi means reveling in one's own self. Yogi means one who can be realized through yoga, or it also means one who is the greatest yogi. The term yoga is defined in our Shastras as stopping all thought flow. Yoga chitta vritti nirodhakaha. So, one who has no thoughts, one who has totally conquered the mind. He is a true yogi. He lives in his own effulgent self nature. He is the greatest yogi. But such a greatest yogi is no one else except the Supreme Being. The Supreme is always in Nisankalpa, Nirvikalpa, Mahasamadhi. He is in a state of Mahasamadhi with no sankalpas, no desires, no vikalpa, means no modifications. The Supreme, who is described as a yogi in this popular verse, in this popular name, is also known as Yogi Shaha in the very first name, next name of this verse. Yogi Shaha means Yogi Ishaha. He is a king, he is a lord of all yogis, lord of all yogins. Upanishad says, one who realizes self, himself becomes the self. He is no longer different. The duality between the self and the Jiva vanishes the moment at the point of realization. Therefore, the self alone is the perfect yogi, and such yogi, the king of yogis, is none other than Vishnu himself. The sense of doership, that is called Kartutva Bhavana, the sense of enjoyership in experience, that is Bhoktrutva Vahana, these two are the attributes of a ego, that is Jiva Bhavana, of a small self, not the big self, that is Supreme Self. Supreme Self is totally free of this. Now, we can also reach that particular level by ending what we call the ego personality. If we stop identifying ourselves with the body, mind, intellect equipment and identify ourselves with the supreme consciousness present in all of us, then we become one with the supreme. Sri Narayana, he is the absolute reality. Only he alone can be free entirely and fully from any involvement in this universe, in this samsara, which is full of seething activities. Hence, he is glorified, the Supreme is glorified as the best among yogis, Yogi Shaha. Such a Supreme is the one fulfilling all our desires. He is called Sarvakamadaha, bestower of all desires, all wishes. He is the one who fulfills all of all true devotees. This clause is very important. True devotees. Now, who is a true devotee? Devotee is one who has only one desire, no other desire. His only one desire is to reach, to meet, and to merge with the Supreme Being. Thus, the term also indicates the Supreme is the one who destroys other desires in us. He destroys the chances of fulfillment, not a fulfillment. Our desire itself will go. Our desire for unholy, sensuous, and lusty desires, these will these are hallmarks of a faithless person. These vanish in a person of true faith. So, in a way, the Supreme will help us to wipe off all these petty desires and have only one desire, that is for moksha, liberation, which he gladly fulfills. The Supreme becomes a Parandhama. He becomes our ultimate resting place. Ashramaha. Ashramaha means resting place. Narayana is like a harbor, is like a protected haven for all those who are tossed about continuously in the storms of life, within and without. This is very much the nature of the prapancha, nature of the our life, mortal life. For everyone, for each one of us, the source of all strains is attributable, as we have just seen, mentioned only because as a jiva, we identify with the body, mind, intellect, equipment. But she is doing that, we get elevated to the level of the supreme to remain as the self, which is essential in real nature of all living beings. It is nothing other than it is experiencing the end of all problems, of all stresses, of all strains, which are the hallmarks of a mortal life. Now, what remains is a state of a peace and joy, quiet and bliss, which is synonymous with the Supreme Being, Narayana, Mahavishnu, Parandhama, Kailasa, Mahasiva. All names are different, but we refer to that place of perennial beauty, bliss. Supreme, who is a resting place, who is ashramaha for virtuous persons, he can suddenly turn into Sramanaha, scorcher. Scorcher for those with worldly wishes, for the worldly people. Scorcher means one who persecutes the worldly people, driven by their hungers and passions, who keep on seeking endlessly the sense gratifications. Now, by the very nature, by very definition, because all these sense objects, all the all the benefits, what we call fruits of desires, these are ephemeral. These are ever-changing instruments of experience. And this life of gratification ultimately will can yield us only exhausting fatigue and terrible disappointment. And this is a law. This is a consequent law. If you run after the objects, you get finally you get only misery. But if you follow the supreme path, give up these petty desires, you reach the Parandama, the place of bliss. This is the rule, this is the law. And the lawgiver is Narayana. But lawgiver and the law are not different. He himself is the law. The law and lawgiver are one and the same. Now the Supreme is at the end, he becomes reducer of all beings called Kshamaha. Kshamaha means reducer, one who reduces every being and everything, for that matter, the entire universe, into the most subtle form and absorbs within himself. At that stage, he prunes away all our agitations and all our desire prompted world projections. The world itself will vanish. Now, the Supreme Being is described as Suparanaha. Suparanaha means having good leaves. Now, what are these leaves? These leaves are of the mythical Ashwatha tree. Ashwatha tree is beautifully described in verse 1 of chapter 15 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Now, it is pictured as a tree which is upside down, roots above and branches below, and all its leaves are nothing but the verses and slokas of the Vedas. Theme of the Vedas is none other than the Supreme Self. So now this verse is very interesting. We can read like this. Urdhvamulam adhashakam ashvatam prahuravyayam chandansi yasya parnani yagatam veda sa veda ved. One who really understands this, once you understand this tree, gets real wisdom. Yagatam veda saha veda. What is this tree? Urdhvamulam, roots above. Adashakam, branches below. And this tree is known as Ashwatham Prahu Avyayam. This is known as the imperishable Ashwatha. And Chandansi Yasya Paranani. Its leaves are the Vedas. The hymns of the Vedas are its leaves. It is called Ashwatha because it is Avyayam. It is called Avyayam, imperishable, imperishable in a relative sense, because the people giant fig tree, it lives for hundreds, maybe 1,000 years. So it is very, very long compared to our limited life of a mortal being. So relatively, it is imperishable. So once you understand the entire universe itself is visualized as a metaphor, this tree is a metaphor for our life and our temporal existence. Now the Supreme becomes the wind to move and activate these leaves. Vayu Vahanaha, mover of the wind. Mover of the wind, the living beings require air to live. It is therefore called Pranavayu, and it is the supreme who helps to move the wind. Or we can say, if we consider it to be the previous leaves of the Ashwatha tree, he is the one who activates the hymns, who makes it accessible, available to the humanity in general. When he says he makes the wind move, there's a very nice Upanishadic saying, declaration. It says, from fear of him, fire burns. From fear of him, the Supreme, the sun and the moon function. The earth rotates, the wind moves. That means all the elements also, they obey the universal law laid down by the Supreme Being. Now, further, to rescue the seekers from the troubles, one more meaning of Vayuvahana is when a devotee is in trouble, like Gajendra, the Supreme Being will will immediately come. Speed of wind. Supreme is as speed of the wind to come and rescue the seekers and the devotees. So here also he is called Vayuvahanaha. Thus, we have covered the 10 names in this particular verse. Now we'll conclude with a small sloka. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrutyurma Amrutangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.